Trascon Interstellar Academy smelled like ozone and disinfectant, a sterile bouquet that reminded Nate Foster uncomfortably of hospitals. He stepped off the shuttle ramp into the terminal atrium, tugging his duffel tighter over one shoulder. His gravity boots whirred as they adjusted to the station's micro-adjusted artificial pull. Around him, beings of every conceivable form flowed through registration lanes, gelatinous, bioluminescent, crystalline, gaseous. No one else had to calibrate their breathing mask 3 times in 30 steps. He was already sweating through the back of his Academy-issue jacket. Nate's creature, listed on the paperwork as a certified Terran Comfort Companion, was curled inside its containment capsule. It was the size of a large melon when it was dormant, dark-furred, and entirely non-threatening. It hadn't made a sound since they left Earth orbit. It rarely did. The intake officer, some sort of spindly-boned Erekthan with translucent fins for ears, narrowed 4 eyes at the comfort animal's classification tag. "This unit does not recognize genus," it chirped. "It's a rescue," Nate said. "Registered under Terran Medical Code 6E2, Trauma Mitigation Protocol. You can scan the implant." After a pause, the officer waved a reader wand across the capsule. It beeped. "Authorization confirmed. Proceed." They never asked what trauma. Nate was quietly thankful for that. The orientation week was mostly a blur of lectures, sleep deprivation, and nausea. Everything on the station was too bright, too fast, too loud. Nate's lungs ached by mid-afternoon most days, thanks to the subtle difference in oxygen ratios. The station tried to accommodate all atmospheres, but humans, being stubbornly analog, weren't as flexible as vaporous or mineral-based cadets. Socially, things were worse. Every group had its own clade, language node, or hive frequency. Nate, with his twitchy smile and clumsy limbs, didn't fit any. His jokes didn't land. His sarcasm confused the neural-linked translator systems. During a lunch cycle, a glimmer-scaled being from the Venari cluster had pointed at him with a feeding tentacle and asked, "Why do you wrinkle your face like that?" "It's a smile." "Oh, I thought it was a warning." He stopped trying after that. Classes were even more brutal. In their first 0G navigation drill, Nate lost control of his suit thrusters and spun slowly into a wall. The instructor, a bulbous-eyed Crixin named Ilvar, watched with mild disappointment as 2 others dragged him out of the bulkhead magnets. Cadet Foster, Earth's gravitational dependency does not excuse poor spatial awareness. The snickering came from behind him, always behind. He recognized the trio without turning. Sarith, Kedge, and Kolvar, all Crixon, all 3rd year. They lingered around drills they weren't assigned to. No one stopped them. The instructors claimed it encouraged mentorship. Nate was not feeling mentored. "You fall like a dropped protein sack," Kolvar muttered once as they passed him in the corridor. "Even your bones are soft." Nate didn't respond. He just kept walking. It wasn't until mid-term drills that the tension snapped. Their instructor explained the parameters of the 0G survival simulation. Each cadet would be sealed in an isolated module with minimal oxygen and limited heat. The objective: locate a hidden repair station, initiate a beacon, and conserve life support until retrieval. "Cadets will be monitored for signs of panic," Ilvar said. "Success is measured not only by solution time, but by physiological stability." Nate knew he could handle the cold. He'd grown up in Vermont. But space wasn't snow. Space was silence and blackness and slow suffocation. His suit felt tighter than normal. When he pressed the seal check button, it beeped green, but the right forearm segment felt warmer than the left. He mentioned it to a tech assistant. "Probably calibration lag," the assistant said, not looking up from his monitor. "We're short-staffed." "We're short-staffed." Nate entered the simulation chamber. At first, it was fine. Dim lights, soft mechanical hum, oxygen cycling slow and steady. He adjusted his tether and initiated beacon search mode. The first hiccup was a flicker in the HUD. His temperature readouts dropped faster than expected. Then came the shortness of breath. Nate paused, tried to override the feed controls. The panel didn't respond. The chill wasn't just in his limbs now, it was in his lungs, the edges of his breath drawing cold, razor thin. He tapped his helmet twice, emergency code. No change. His fingers were starting to tremble. His vision blurred at the edges. Something was wrong, really wrong. He hit the override again. Nothing. His legs gave way, and he floated sideways, eyes wide, heart hammering. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The world tilted. Then it all went dark. Meanwhile, in room 217B, beneath a metal desk bolted to the composite flooring, a creature uncurled. Its outer limbs twitched first, like antennae stretching after a deep slumber. 8 appendages unfolded, jointed and sinuous, like a spider built by faulty nanobots. It made no noise, no grand announcement. But the lights above flickered once, then twice. In the observation room of the simulation lab, Sareth leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the cadets flail in their modules. "He'll freeze in minutes," Kedge whispered. "Think the suit will crack before they notice?" Kolvar laughed. Then something moved behind them. At first it was just a shift in air pressure. A hiss, a presence, something wrong with the room that their brains registered before their eyes did. Kolvar turned. It stood in the corner, eyes that reflected no light, limbs that bent wrong, flesh that shimmered as if unsure what form to take. It didn't roar, it didn't move. It blinked. Kolvar screamed. Sareth stumbled back, knocking over a console chair. Kedge ran into the wall at full sprint, bounced off, and kept running. The alarms hadn't gone off yet, but they would. He didn't care. He slammed his palm onto every emergency pad he could reach. The creature remained still. It blinked again. Then it vanished. Nate woke in the infirmary, with cotton in his throat and fire in his chest. "Don't move," someone said. A nurse. Green-skinned, 6 arms, gentle eyes. "You were hypoxic. Mild frostbite on the extremities. Oxygen levels are stable now, but you'll be here for a few days." Nate tried to speak. His tongue didn't listen. "You're lucky," she added. "Someone finally triggered an alarm. Got to you just in time." Nate blinked groggily. "What happened?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she adjusted his IV, then looked toward the corner of the room. "Your companion arrived shortly after, curled up under the bed." Nate glanced weakly over. There it was, curled like always, unmoving, quiet. The nurse leaned closer, lowering her voice. "They said your pet blinked at them, and they ran. Fast." Nate squinted. "It blinked?" "That's what they said." He tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. The nurse gently placed an oxygen mask over his face. "Rest. You'll be sore for a while. No more drills until your levels normalize." As she left the room, Nate turned his head slowly toward the creature. Its eyes were closed. A faint whistling snore like a broken tea kettle rose from its chest. Nate murmured through the mask, "Thanks, buddy." The creature flicked its tail once, then went back to sleep. Cadet Nate Foster didn't step back into the corridors of Trascon Interstellar Academy for 4 days. The infirmary nurses had insisted on full oxygen resaturation therapy, daily thermal circulation scans, and supervised remobility tests. Even the Academy's notoriously impatient medical administrator, a leathery Harnaxian with the bedside manner of a broken datapad, grudgingly signed off only after Nate proved he could walk a full corridor length without needing to sit down. His fingers still tingled from time to time. Cold took longer to leave the bones than it did the skin. The morning he was discharged, the nurse from before a gentle-voiced Bellari named Felith tugged a thermal wrap tighter around his neck. "You'll feel colder for a while," she said, looping it twice. "Your nerve endings are still playing catch-up. Just don't rush things." Nate nodded, too exhausted to argue. His comfort animal, still just the creature, in his own mind ambled behind him on tiny limbs, unhurried. It hadn't made a sound since the infirmary. Occasionally, it paused to sniff wall outlets or stare at light fixtures. It didn't blink. Nate didn't ask why. Back at his dorm, nothing had moved. The air smelled faintly of ozone and peppermint. A datapad lay on his bed, blinking red. An official summons. Post-incident review, second cycle, attendance mandatory. Nate sighed. It was barely first cycle. Enough time to shower, maybe try a protein bar, and wonder just how much of the mess was going to get pinned on him. By the time he reached the review chamber, a dozen pairs of eyes followed him through the door. Half were staff. The others wore admin badges and diplomatic insignias, EarthGov, Trascan Council, one even from the Crixan Embassy. A translator drone hovered behind the table, humming softly. Instructor Ilvar gestured to the empty seat. Cadet Foster. Nate sat slowly. "We are here," Ilvar began, "to discuss the events during Simulation Theta 29C, in which you suffered environmental suit failure, leading to hypoxic collapse." One of the EarthGov reps leaned forward. "We'd like to be clear, Cadet. You're not on trial." "Could have fooled me," Nate mumbled. The translator beeped. Ilvar ignored both. "Records show your suit passed initial seal check. Tech logs, however, confirm tampering minor incisions at junction points consistent with thermal filament tools." That explained the warmth in his arm module. "A sabotage attempt?" Nate asked, his voice still rough. "Yes," said a new voice. It came from a Crixan shorter than the others Nate had seen, dressed in sharp black robes, insignia dull silver. "But those responsible are no longer your concern." Nate frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means they've been removed from active academy status," said the EarthGov rep. "Officially reassigned. Unofficially relocated." "Wait, that's it?" Ilvar tilted his head. "This academy operates under treaties and interstellar accords. Open accusations of attempted murder risk diplomatic backlash." Nate stared at the table. His hands were trembling. He pressed them into his lap. "So, they walk," he said flatly. "No," the Crixan said. "They run, from whatever your creature is." The silence that followed was loud. Nate looked up. It didn't hurt anyone. "It didn't have to," said another voice, this time from Felith, standing at the chamber wall. She'd come to observe. Her expression was unreadable. The EarthGov rep cleared her throat. "Let's talk about that. Your companion." Nate looked over his shoulder. It had followed him into the chamber, of course. Curled again beneath the observation bench, limbs tucked in, one lidless eye tracking the lights above. "You registered it as a comfort animal. Nothing in your file indicates prior aggression, enhanced traits, or telepathic resonance." Nate blinked. "Because I don't know what it is." "You don't?" "No, I found it in a scrapyard in Anchorage 3 years ago. It followed me home. Ate 3 floorboards and curled up under my bed. Never left. So, I applied for certification after therapy recommended emotional support. No red flags on the registry database." The Crixan watched him with interest. "You're saying it just appeared?" "It prefers dark corners and warm laundry. It hates processed soy and the scent of oranges. I don't know what it is, but it's never hurt me." Ilvar tapped the table. "That matches footage. The creature exited your dorm 10 minutes into the simulation failure, entered the observation deck without triggering motion sensors, and remained completely still during the incident." "Except for blinking," Nate said dryly. Ilvar inclined his head. "Yes, except for blinking." The room remained quiet for another long minute. Then, the EarthGov rep stood. "For now, Cadet Foster, you're to resume academic activity under restricted schedule. No drills, no simulations, medical supervision for all activities." "And the creature?" "We're working with Terran xenologists to understand it better. But since it's bonded to you, and it shows no hostility unless provoked, it stays." Nate exhaled. Half relief, half uncertainty. "Am I dismissed?" Ilvar nodded. Nate stood, legs slightly shaky. As he passed the bench, the creature unfolded just enough to pad after him. The Crixan diplomat stepped aside without a word. In the corridor outside, Nate leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He was alive, the saboteurs were gone, but the whispers were already spreading. As he made his way to the dorm sector, he heard snippets from passing cadets. "That's the one human from Earth." His pet saw into their minds, made them flee. "I heard it doesn't sleep, just watches." Nate's shoulders hunched tighter. At his door, the creature slipped in ahead of him. It curled again, under the desk. Nate sat heavily on his bed and stared. He hesitated, then leaned forward. "Did you know," he asked softly, "back in the chamber, did you know I was dying?" The creature's eyes flicked open, It stared back. No growl, no movement, no sound. "Why'd you wait?" he whispered. No response. It just blinked once, slowly. Nate leaned back, wrapping his arms around himself. "Next time," he said, "maybe do more than blink." The creature gave a small, involuntary sneeze. It sounded like a cough crossed with static. Then it snored. Nate let himself laugh. Quiet, exhausted. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But whatever it was, whatever that thing was, under his desk, it was on his side. By the second week after the incident, Nate Foster could feel the change in gravity long before the calibration techs confirmed it. Not the artificial pull of the station, he'd finally adapted to that, but the social kind. The magnetic shift of perception. Wherever he walked, paths cleared a little faster. Conversations paused a little longer. Entire clusters of cadets pretended to study wall panels when he passed by. He was used to being noticed. The wrong kind of noticed. Clumsy, sweaty, breathless in drills. But this was different. They weren't mocking him anymore. They were avoiding him. All because of what didn't happen. Because 3 cadets ran screaming from a creature that never touched them. He didn't correct the rumors. It wouldn't have mattered. The whispers mutated hourly. It can stretch through vents without making a sound. It mimics voices. One of them heard his own mother calling him right before it appeared. Crixin neuro patterns shorted for hours. Someone said it eats memories. Nate sat quietly through xenobiology lectures, attended required ethics labs, ate his protein bars in the corner of the mess hall, where no one else dared sit. The creature stayed beside his feet or under the bench, always quiet, always watching. When he dropped a utensil once, it caught it mid-fall. No one commented. A Wathi cadet near the serving line fainted. During recovery drills, the instructors gave him a pass on practical components. No one said it out loud, but they didn't want him in the simulation chambers again. Too many questions. Too few answers. Then, one afternoon, a message blinked onto his personal terminal. Cadet Foster, report to Interstellar Cultures, Classroom 4 Amperes. Lecture reassignment. He frowned. He wasn't enrolled in that course. Still, orders were orders. When he stepped into the lecture hall, it was nearly empty. 4 students, 2 staff, no instructor, and 1 empty chair in the center, surrounded by hollow panels. "Foster," someone called. A familiar voice, Instructor Kelm, from his ethics module. Rigid posture, mechanical leg, a stern tone that could flatten even the more boisterous species. "We're conducting a cultural tolerance simulation. You're being reassigned as the subject variable. Sit." That didn't sound ominous at all. Nate sat. The hollow panels flickered on. Scenarios appeared. First contact negotiations, interspecies misunderstandings, diplomatic etiquette for species with memory-sharing skin. "You're not expected to solve these," Kelm said. "Just react. The others will interpret your responses. Begin." The first simulation loaded. A Trascon ambassador offered Nate a luminescent fruit, which promptly disintegrated into vapor upon touch. The expected response was apology. Nate blinked at the panel. I didn't mean to offend. Do you have napkins for the cloud?" Kelm grunted. Second simulation. A hive-minded delegation misread his silence as dominance assertion. "Not dominance," Nate said quickly. "Just confusion. I'm confused a lot. It's normal." Third. A diplomatic gift-giving faux pas, where his creature, now oddly included in the virtual render, blinked at a dignitary, triggering mass panic. Nate stared at the projection. "Seriously? We're doing that now?" The class chuckled nervously. He finished the module. As he stood, one of the students approached a short copper-scaled Avexi with large black eyes. "Your creature," she said quietly. "Does it know things?" Nate hesitated. "What kind of things?" "I dreamed of it," she whispered. "Before I ever saw it. I think it was waiting for something." He didn't know what to say to that. That night, Nate sat in his dorm with the lights low. The creature rested beneath the desk as always, but something in its posture had changed, looser, but watching. Less curled. Limbs closer to ready. "Do you remember Anchorage?" he asked. "The junkyard. I thought you were a raccoon at first. No response. You chewed through 2 walls and digested a metal lamp. Still, nothing. Nate leaned forward. Why do you stay? The creature's head tilted slightly, one eye blinking twice. And then, slowly, it dragged itself out from under the desk. It stretched, fully, limbs unfolding. Not violently, just expansively. Nate's breath caught. It was taller than it should have been, wider. Its surface shimmered in patches, like skin trying on a dozen textures at once. It moved with smooth confidence, placing itself between Nate and the door. Then it tapped the air. No, it tapped a point in the air. A shimmer appeared, a translucent globe. Data lines, location threads. A map? Nate stood, slowly approaching. The globe pulsed at his proximity. Earth, Trascon Station, one blinking red marker, far from both. What is this? The creature tapped again. The marker zoomed in. The name appeared in Terran alphabet. Varellin Deep Orbit Research Lab. He looked down at it. You want to go there? No movement, just a low hum, like a purr and a modem tone fused. I'm not cleared to leave the station. The hum increased. The globe dimmed, faded. The creature returned to its place under the desk, curled again, but it left a trail of warm air, like a recent fire. Nate didn't sleep well. The next day, he found himself pulled aside after class by Instructor Ilvar. Foster, a word. They walked through the observation wing quiet since the simulation had been shut down. Ilvar paused by a console. You are aware, he said without emotion, that the creature remains unclassified. Nate nodded. Ilvar turned to face him. You are also aware that certain factions believe it is weaponized. I'm not a weapon. No, but Earth has long traditions of misdirection. The Trascan Council suspects the creature was allowed into the Academy as insurance. That thought had occurred to Nate more than once. Ilvar continued. There is discussion of reassignment. Remote research station, quieter, fewer witnesses. Nate felt the cold again, not in the room, but deep inside his chest. I didn't ask for this, he said. I believe you. Then tell them. Don't move me like I'm a security risk. Ilvar's eyes narrowed. The creature isn't normal. It has no heartbeat, no thermal signature when dormant, and it walked past 11 biometric security fields without notice. I know. Silence. Ilvar tapped the console once. You are still a cadet. But understand this, Foster. Fear bends policy faster than diplomacy. Choose your next actions carefully. Later that evening, as Nate returned to his dorm, he noticed a small packet slipped under his door. No name, no markings. Inside, a keycard and a single line of text. If it moves again, follow it. We'll be watching. He looked down at the creature, still curled, still silent. But something in its position suggested alertness. Nate swallowed hard. Just blink once, he whispered, if this is going to get worse before it gets better. The creature blinked. 3 days passed before the creature moved again. Not just stirred, but moved deliberately. Nate had almost convinced himself it had changed its mind, that whatever instinct or data had urged it to project that map had passed, like a forgotten dream. He'd returned to classes, kept his head down, finished assignments, and avoided questions. The campus had quieted since the post-incident panic, though the distance between him and the rest of the cadets had solidified. He wasn't ostracized anymore. He was quarantined. Not officially, but space had a way of enforcing its own protocols. Then, on the 3rd night, he felt it. Not a sound, not a visual cue, just a presence behind him, like air pressure shifting in an unsealed room. The creature was standing. All 8 limbs extended, eyes glowing faintly. It didn't look at him. Instead, it pointed one limb toward the door, then stepped through it without waiting. Nate stared. Then he moved. He grabbed the datapad, slipped on his boots, and stuffed the keycard into his pocket. He didn't ask where they were going. The creature didn't speak, but it walked slowly enough that he could keep up. Down 3 decks, through maintenance hatches, past blinking hazard panels and sealed-off junctions. It moved with absolute certainty, like it had known the route for years. Nate followed in silence, heart hammering, limbs still weak from his recent recovery. They arrived at a rarely used docking sub-bay, long since decommissioned for cadet use. It took him a second to recognize it as part of the original freight ring from the station's early orbital construction phase. The creature stopped in front of a sealed bulkhead, then turned to face him. Nate hesitated. "You want me to open it?" A blink. He pulled out the keycard, slid it into the panel. Access granted. The door hissed open. Beyond it was a small craft, ancient, Terran-built. Short range, atmospheric, capable. No crew assigned. It shouldn't have been here. But then again, neither should the creature. Nate stepped inside. It smelled like dust, old circuitry, and pine needles. "Is this yours?" he asked. The creature slithered in behind him, curled in the rear compartment, still but watchful. Nate ran diagnostics. Systems came online. Destination programming loaded. There it was again. Virulun Deep Orbit Research Lab. The coordinates were preloaded, locked in. He turned slowly to the creature. "You're not just some Earth cryptid, are you?" No response. Nate sat back, sighed, and tapped the ignition. The ship detached without incident. No alerts, no alarms. He didn't know how. But by the time station control realized the launch had happened, he'd be long past the nearest relay zone. The journey to Virulun Deep Orbit took 7 hours. The ship had limited FTL capacity, relying mostly on gravitational assist slingshots and short warps. Nate dozed for part of it, then sat awake, staring at the creature across from him. It didn't sleep. It didn't even blink. Just waited. The lab came into view like a dead satellite rotating slowly in blackness, lights off, station dark. No signals, no signs of life. Nate docked manually, hands steady only because they had to be. He cycled the airlock and stepped into silence. The interior was untouched. A single Terran science lab, left adrift years ago when funding shifted. Earth had so many of these half-forgotten projects scattered across orbit, testing gravity, biology, AI, atmosphere shielding. Most were shut down quietly. This one hadn't been touched at all. The creature moved ahead, limbs clicking softly on the floor. Nate followed. They reached the central observation chamber, still powered, dust on every surface, panels blinking softly, waiting for input. The creature stopped in front of a large tank empty, no cracks, no damage, just unused. A plaque beside it read, Project, Eidolon, Terraform Adaptation Prototype B. Nate's mouth went dry. He reached out, scrolling through the dusty data logs. Most were corrupted, but some remained. Log 1. Subject does not communicate but mimics limited organic behavior, sleeps near heat sources, observes crew without direct interaction. Log 3. Behavioral bonding noted. Subject follows specific crew member, remains near their living quarters. Protective behavior unconfirmed. Final log. All funding pulled. Subject relocated for off-site containment. Final record scrubbed per protocol. He turned slowly. The creature was still facing the tank, its limbs slightly tense. "You were part of this." A blink. "They made you here. Or grew you." The creature tapped the tank once with an appendage, not forcefully, like a farewell. Then it turned, walked back toward the hatch. Nate stood in place, heart racing. "You wanted me to see this? Why?" The creature paused. Then, in a moment that chilled Nate deeper than any simulation chamber ever had, it made a sound. Not a growl, not a word. A memory. It played back his own voice, clipped, distant. "Next time maybe do more than blink." Then it added a second phrase, not his. A new voice. "We stay with what we understand." Nate's breath caught, his throat closed up. "That was the scientist," he whispered, "the one you bonded with before me." The creature didn't confirm. It didn't need to. They left the lab in silence. When the craft returned to the Academy's outer perimeter, alarms finally did sound. Shuttles launched, patrol beacons pinged the hull. Nate kept his hands where cameras could see them. The creature didn't hide. It stood beside him as the security team entered the cabin, rifles raised. But no one fired. Not after the briefing they'd all read. Not after the last time someone underestimated it. Nate was detained for 12 hours, questioned, isolated, re-medically screened. When they finally let him out, EarthGov had already sent a diplomat. She met him in a small conference chamber, her suit crisp, eyes unreadable. "You violated protocol. I followed a living mystery into a bigger one. That's kind of what Earth does." She didn't smile. "We know what Project Eidolon was, but we didn't know one survived." "It didn't just survive," Nate said. "It chose to protect. That has to mean something." "It does." She stood. "Which is why it stays with you. Officially listed under Terran Companion Program Special Classification." Nate blinked. "You're not taking it?" "You bonded with it. That can't be replicated. And frankly, no one wants to risk it blinking at the wrong diplomat." She walked to the door. "One last thing," she added. "You're not being expelled. The Academy wants you to finish training, quietly." "And the creature?" "They'll stop asking questions, for now." Nate leaned back in the chair, exhaling hard. Later that night, back in his dorm, the creature curled beneath his desk again. This time, he didn't ignore it. He reached down, gently scratched the top of its oddly warm head. "I get it now," he said softly. "You're not a weapon,